Oscar Alpha, roger. Just doing a right-hand orbit over there to rejoin the right-hand downwind. Yeah, that's the roger, you'll be overflown by an ATR, just 5 miles to the north, so you'll be number 2 for the full advice, rejoining the downwind. Oscar Alpha.
It's a lovely old aircraft to fly.
It's not the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
It really is pretty ugly.
The little Skyvan is a lovely little plane.
It's a wonderful airplane.
First Air 2841's looking for just 3,700 for 25. Roger.
The best shape for a cargo is like a shoebox.
One beauty of the Skyvan is it's square inside, so you fit boxes in great and square things.
Everybody called it a shoebox.
Give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train.
For 40 years, a strange little aeroplane built in Belfast has been plying its trade across the globe. The Shorts Skyvan. On rough jungle airstrips, on frozen lakes, and on the runways of international airports, it's been seen in just about every country in the world. It was innovative, it was unique, and even today, few modern aircraft can match the capabilities of the flying shoebox.
It was designed to operate in and out of short, semi-prepared strips, typical farmer's field, for example.
Whether it was South America in the Andes or the Himalayas, wherever, we were there.
The aircraft was large enough to carry the Volkswagen microbus.
They could carry 18 paratroopers, 12 full stretchers with their people and stuff like that.
One of the best things the Skyvan ever did was help win the little war they had in Oman.
In New York and in Dallas and Chicago, you looked out the window as you were taxiing and there was always Skyvans on the ramp.
The Short Skyliner, an airliner of unique character built to meet the challenge of the 70s.
The Turbo Skyvan is an all-purpose light transport aircraft designed to carry a wide variety of civil and military loads.
And now the Short Skyvan 3M light tactical transport. Go anywhere, short takeoff and landing, a very versatile workhorse.
Dream, 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 dream.
Work on the Skyvan began in 1959. Shorts created a new light aircraft division specifically for the project.
And this consisted of just a few experienced engineers, but mostly it was staffed by juniors, such as I, who had very little experience, but a lot of enthusiasm. And we did what we could to get into it, blundering quite a bit on the way, and eventually the Skyvan one emerged.
There was a feeling, I suppose, amongst the main people that this funny little operation was going on under Frank Robertson, and Frank was one of those people who played his cards close to his chest.
Frank Robertson was a very entertaining gentleman who had a penchant for the colour green and wore nice silk green waistcoats.
And nobody really knew very much about what was going on. But it's turned out, of course, to be the salvation of Shorts.
Short Brothers and Harland started in the aviation business by building balloons for the Indian government behind the Battersea Gasworks in London. They moved to Belfast just before the war, and it was here that they designed the famous Sunderland flying boat.
While the Skyvan would later earn respect and admiration around the world, its maiden flight was a rather inauspicious start, lasting just 10 minutes, on the 17th of January, 1963.
For weeks, the flight was held up because of adverse weather and snow on the runway and so forth. But eventually Dennis Taylor took his car onto the runway and went up a few times and down a few times and decided it was time to go.
No sooner had it taken off, a squall came across and it took off in a snowstorm. And we thought, oh, it's disappeared now, you know. But it was okay.
Dennis Taylor himself took it on the first flight by himself, actually. But he didn't go too far down Belfast Lough. He He turned around relatively quickly because the engines were starting to overheat a bit.
I understand that the pilot said on the radio during the final approach, "It's getting bloody hot."
They all said it was a short takeoff and landing aircraft, and we'd never guessed it was so short. Well, I would say inside the length of a cricket pitch, the thing was down and stopped.
As the Skyvan's long life was beginning, the Belfast group Them, featuring a young Van Morrison, had just recorded their first single. Belfast Shipyard was by far the largest employer with a workforce of 15,000. The cross-community Northern Ireland Labour Party was beginning to make inroads in a much less sectarian society. And in the days before Tesco and Sainsbury, when everyone used their corner shop, the bread was most definitely Ormo.
It was commonly known as the bread van. In fact, in the flight shed, some jokers actually cut out large letters out of paper and taped them onto the side of the aeroplane. Ormo.
The Skyvan came at a crucial time for Shorts. Despite some notable post-war successes in flight development, armoured cars and missiles, it was difficult to keep the Belfast workforce fully employed during the industry's downtimes. For a while they diversified, making everything from heavy lifting equipment to milk churns, carpet sweepers, car bodies and wheelchairs. The Skyvan's production helped secure thousands of jobs. But before production came development. Tom Johnson and Malcolm Wilde had been in Shorts since the early 50s.
Around.
That's you in the back, Malcolm.
That's me in the background.
Tom worked at improving performance, Malcolm in flight testing. And those early days were not without their moments of drama and danger. A forced landing at Newton Ards concluded Test Flight 3 when a prototype engine was on trial over the Irish Sea.
And that's when it suddenly decided it wanted to stop. And the expression was used, it put a leg out of bed, which really meant that the piston rod actually came out through the side of the engine.
Only later did Shorts receive a message from the supplier to treat the engines gently. They were the very first ones off the production line.
And of course, we had been carrying out all sorts of tests on these engines to make sure that they were okay before this. And we had been using them fairly harshly up and down just to check things. So it was no coincidence, if you like, that eventually these new prototype engines suddenly decided to let go.
Sir Philip Foreman rose through the ranks in Shorts to become managing director and later chairman. He was chief engineer when another test flight came close to grief. The crew had deliberately turned off one engine to assess its capacity to restart in flight, but they couldn't get it going again.
By mistake, one of the test pilots turned off the other engine. So for a short time over the Copelands, they had a very expensive glider. Fortunately, they got both engines going again just before they landed on the water.
The scariest thing I had was probably over the Copelands one day. I was doing one of the production test flights on this Skyvan, which involved taking it to maximum speed and giving it a good shake. And when I gave it a good shake, there was an enormous bang came from the back of the aeroplane, and I thought, my goodness, what's that? Fortunately, it was just a window had fallen out or blown out, but it could have been worse. It just gave you a wee twinge.
In appearance, Skyvan has no pretense to elegance. It is basically an aeroplane designed round the required carrying capacity, and its niche in world aviation is assured for many years to come.
The Skyvan hit the market at just the right time. There was growing demand for a low-cost aeroplane which was small, rugged and reliable. The first buyers were commercial, but Shorts were also promoting worldwide the Skyvan's military and paratrooping abilities.
The military Skyvan becomes an ideal platform for parachuting men and supplies.
Le Skyvan est appuyé par un service ininterrompu. 空中小卡车载22个军人的座位。El Skyvan militar es capaz de transportar cargamentos de hasta 2.670 kilos.
And 40 years on, the Skyvan remains in demand by skydivers in some of the top parachute schools throughout America and Europe.
I'm learning to fly.
The Skyvan was to play a part in the romance of Alfie and Margaret McLaren. They met and married while working together at Shorts. Alfie had built the first scale models of Skyvan for initial testing. Margaret was a telephonist, about to embark on an adventure.
The company secretary sent for me one day, and all I could think was, oh my goodness, I've done something dreadful. Why is the company secretary sending for me? So when I went down, he asked me, would I like to go to represent the company at the Farnborough Air Show? And of course I didn't hesitate. I said yes right away. And then consequently, we would go to Paris. We would have prime ministers and members of the royal family would come, and you know, I couldn't believe at times here I am, just a young girl from Belfast and in this lovely business environment and meeting all these exciting people, and it was a very exciting time.
The flying shoebox caused something of a stir at the big air shows, not just because of its 6-foot square section, its huge rear door and its short takeoff ability, but its construction as well. The body was made from 2 thin sheets of metal, bonded rather than riveted together. One was flat, the other corrugated for strength. This unique process, developed by Shorts, made the Skyvan light but very strong. And the bonding also meant less corrosion and a longer fatigue life.
Trains and boats and planes.
When it started to sell in the 60s, the days of cheap foreign travel and package holidays were yet to arrive. The Skyvan was to bring travel, excitement and adventure to a whole range of Shorts staff, pilots, sales teams and engineers.
I don't think that many of us had travelled outside the UK before we started travelling with the Skyvan, and it opened up a whole new world for us. You were staying in the mud hut in Yemen, but 6 weeks later we could have been staying in a 4-star hotel in Los Angeles or Kuala Lumpur or Singapore.
I've got to really thank this funny looking aeroplane for my experience of virtually travelling the world. I was in Austria, I was in the United States, I travelled to South America in all sorts of funny places that I'd never even heard of before.
Local schools caught on to this, and the pilots eventually started sending postcards from these odd countries back. It worked as a marvellous geography lesson for the school children.
Not knowing any better, we landed in Baghdad, and the way the hotel would pass through a square, and there was 2 rotting corpses hanging from a gallows in it, with a notice around their neck saying suspected CIA agents. So that sort of gave us a very pleasant evening to start off with.
Demonstrating the aircraft to the Burmese Army and Air Force. We had a task to drop supplies to Army bases, and just as the load started to move, one of the Burmese sergeants tapped me on my left shoulder. Silly me, I turned around into the load. I started to disappear out the back of the aeroplane with the load. Fortunately enough, I had my safety harness on, but for a few seconds I was dangling from the back of the aeroplane, so I had my own little experience of floating in space.
In spite of the continuing troubles in Belfast, and there have been bombings and shootings only a mile from here, they've won the Queen's Award for Industry every year now for the last 7 years, and have just announced that last year they made a profit of nearly £4 million.
Ex-RAF pilot Lindsay Cumming was one of 500 applicants for a pilot's vacancy in Shorts. He got the job and with his wife Jenny arrived from England.
Skyvan brought us back to Northern Ireland after a gap, and really to a life of being left as an aeroplane widow, I think one could call it. And Lindsay used to vanish for 3 months at a time.
We arrived over on the Monday morning, went to work, and they said, okay, Friday you're off to the Middle East. So that was early November, and I didn't get back till Christmas.
I started Shorts in 1956, retired undefeated in December 1997. In those days, your boss just told you were going to such and such a place, go out to the pilot's office and find who the pilot is and make the plans to get the groceries on board, and off you go. Inevitably, of course, shorts lied all the time. I mean, that first trip to Ghana was 4 weeks. It was 10 weeks when we got home.
Those adventurous trips by the Shorts crews through the 1960s and 70s led to 150 sails worldwide. They proved the ruggedness and dependability of the flying Shoebox, and half of those aircraft are still flying today.
Echo Hotel Uniform, Melmac Tower, good evening. Taxi runway 09, hold short of runway 33.
In the hard times and they go, I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should.
Hotel Uniform, Roger, taxi onto runway 09, hold short of runway 33 for landing traffic. There will be a skyback.
One of today's northernmost Skyvans is a 30-year-old veteran run by Canadian Jamie Tate and his wife Barb in their company Summit Air. They operate close to the Arctic Circle in temperatures down to 45 below.
Yellowknife's a city of about 18,000 people, 60-40 native to white population in a fairly remote area and big in the diamond industry right now. We can deliver anything from dynamite to diesel fuel.
I first saw the Skyvan about 8 years ago in the Yukon. Jamie Tate brought one in, and I thought, it's not the prettiest girl I've ever seen. But Jamie always does things a little different, so we stood back, everybody in town, and watched and waited and see what happened, and sure enough, it's a good working tool.
Barb and Jamie are long-standing Skyvan fans. They've just bought a second one, previously owned by the Mexican government. Their business is a 24-hour job, and the Skyvan has helped it grow. Their other aircraft is a Dornier, with more creature comforts for passengers, but without the load-lugging ability of the Skyvan.
We got into some skydiving contracts, one in Hawaii, one down in Brazil. It opened up opportunities for us that we never thought we could. We start our board meeting about 4 o'clock in the morning. And then, then our day starts happening, and we can get phone calls anytime. We don't have a lot of contracts per se, so it's all pop-up charters. And you need to really have a crew that's willing to roll with that.
Jeffrey is about 5'2" Chinese Malaysian fellow working for us, and this is probably the first airplane he's ever flown that he didn't have to have a cushion behind his back so that his feet would hit the pedals.
It's great. It's my first turbine aircraft as far as my personal experience go. It's got lots of power. For the load it carries, even with full load, he still climbs really well.
We're going to have to set the tent right on the back here, so we're going to have to move as much stuff forward as we can.
Big plane.
Yeah, it's going to fill that whole spot. The long and short of it is the Skyvan will load anything way faster and easier than we can put through a side door of our Dornier 228.
The Skyvan is a unique aircraft, and it really fits a niche that is here in Yellowknife that isn't being covered. I mean, some of the things we can put in the Skyvan would have to normally go in a Herc.
We've hauled horses, we've hauled wrecked airplanes, we've hauled vehicles, we've hauled drill masts that stick out the back of the airplane beyond the tailgate. The guys in Belfast did do something right. They did a good job. They just needed me marketing their airplane is what they really needed.
I am flying like a bird across the sky.
Inside, the Skyvan is far from the quietest plane in the world, and the early passenger versions certainly weren't sophisticated.
The inside was very noisy. Big efforts were made to cut the noise by soundproofing of various forms, but this proved too heavy and was cutting the payload. So eventually it was taken out, and the effort was diverted to ear-defending headsets, which I was involved in to try and preserve the pilot's hearing. Fortunately, ones I've spoken to in recent years still can hear, so it must have worked.
The noise of it was very, very loud, and you were sort of shouting across, "Does anybody want a cup of coffee?" or "Anybody want a cup of tea?"
Cortina, home base of Air Alpi, the rapidly expanding Italian airline, an airfield ringed by alpine peaks. The Skyvan was the first twin-engined aircraft ever to land and go into commercial service.
I seem to remember in those very early flights of Emerald Airways, the passengers were issued with blankets and earplugs. Blankets to keep warm, and earplugs so they weren't deafened by the noise.
Come fly with me.
Unsophisticated it may have been, but the little Skyvan was to launch a whole family of box-shaped aircraft, and together their sales would reach more than 500.
We flew the CAB board, the Civil Aeronautics board, on a Sunday morning, complete with their wives, around Washington in a Skyvan with these rather nice seats and so on inside. And we managed to persuade them that yes, we had a basic fuselage that could be stretched to 30 seats, which is what the industry was crying out for. And we were the only people in the world who did that.
The old design is being enlarged to carry 30 passengers in a short-range commuter airliner, which will also be built in Belfast.
If we had not gone on to do this stretch Skyvan, then there would have been a redundancy of something like 1,000 people, probably next year. We are maintaining that 1,000.
So we started with a 6'6" square box, the shoebox with a ruler across the top, turned it into the 330 with 30 passengers, and then into the 360 with 36 passengers.
And then, lo and behold, 10 years later, along comes a requirement for the US Air Force and the Army National Guard, who wanted rear loading. So what we have to do, take off the back ends of the 360 and put the rear cargo loading on. So, I mean, it went full cycle as a whole family over 20 years or more.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom.
The Skyvan even played its part in the space race, capturing in flight sensitive scientific equipment dropped from miles above the Earth.
Ground control.
And around the globe, its loads have ranged from amusing to gruesome.
10 Skyvans have now been flown from Northern Ireland to southern Arabia and are now operating with British mercenaries in a guerrilla war.
The actual Skyvan came in and lifted off over 40 heads of terrorists that they'd taken off because they'd raided the village, killed some people, and they had brought some of the villagers who'd lost members of their family in to show them the heads of their terrorists as a sort of morale booster for them. But it wasn't a very pleasant sight, like as you can imagine, you know.
One of the last jobs was to go to Shannon. One of the principal uses for the aircraft was to transport racehorses across the channel. And it did amuse me when one of them said that the racehorses really enjoyed the Skyvan. They put it down to the fact that the horses, if they were two abreast, they could look across the shoulders of the pilot and second pilot and see out. And this appealed to the horses, and they maintain that the horses really enjoyed their flights in the Skyvan.
It was actually carried full of goats. Well, they were carried them in plastic bags, alive goats, by the way, because they like killing their meat themselves, so you can't bring frozen meat or fresh meat in, it's killed. It's ritualistic that they kill it themselves. And but even with the plastic bags, you still got quite a bit of, especially urine around the floor of the aircraft, so we had the design people actually come up and put extra drain holes in, and we had to add into the maintenance schedule more frequent washing down and cleaning, lifting the floors, making sure even underneath the floors and all were well cleaned out.
The Discovery mine site here was pretty much in full operation during the late 40s, early 50s, and it was all gold They're doing exploration work for the potential reopening of the mine. The helicopters, they'll bring the drills and stuff back to these little airstrips and stuff that we work from, and then they'll set the load on the ground, and we'll get around the load and figure out how to get it up on a set of rollers and then winch it in the airplane, and away it goes.
You guys okay?
Ready? Yeah,
It may not have been intended to work out in the bush in, the year 2002, but it certainly does a good job right now. We seem to fit in between a conventional aircraft and a helicopter, so often where we go there's not a lot of extra room. We seem to spend a lot of time going where nobody else wants to go, so you can fly along for an hour fat, dumb and happy, and then have quite an exciting event in and out of the landing strip.
The life of the airplane and stuff is such that it'll definitely see the end of my aviation career. I don't plan on doing this for the rest of my life. I've got a boat and a cigar sitting on the dash waiting for me to retire, so we'll see what happens. I have my best days when I'm out flying still, and I far prefer being out in the field working than being in the office and trying to figure out how to make the other guys work.
One disadvantage of the Skyvan's shape is that it can't be pressurized, so it's designed to fly at around 10,000 feet. But caught in tropical storms, it has been known to fly just a little higher.
I watched in slight horror as the altimeter passed 12,000, 16,000, 18,000, 20,000, 24,000. We had obviously got too close to one of the rising columns of air, and we were spat out at 29,000 feet.
The Skyvan could cope with more than extremes of height. Its strength meant it was often flown overweight, as one pilot discovered after landing at a remote airstrip to examine a warning light.
He got the manifest out and started checking through the various items on board, and he then realised that instead of carrying the goods as pounds, they were actually kilograms. So the weight of the airplane, he was about 40 to 50% overweight. And he looks around the airfield and decides, I can't leave this stuff here, it'll just disappear. So he loaded it all back in again, took off and continued the flight.
Such was the volume of the aircraft that the idea of the airplane was ready for takeoff when it was full, and they just filled it. The first action, if they did have an incident, was to get rid of half the cargo before the certification authorities appeared on the scene to establish what the cause of the problem was.
Even the largest passengers find the seats amply wide. And there's plenty of legroom. The Royal Flight of Nepal bought this one for royal journeys to and from small sloping strips high on Himalayan mountainsides. In country like that, you don't find many real airfields. The King's compartment is regal indeed, with 4 reclining and swivelling chairs. In the middle, there is a galley and bar.
The King of Nepal actually bought 3 Skyvans, and when one was slightly damaged on landing, locals said it was because it hadn't been blessed. So a ceremony was quickly arranged, complete with sacrificial goat.
So the chief priest fellow lifted the back end of the goat with all the blood and gore gushing out of its neck, and he went round the entire aeroplane, and they daubed mystical signs on the nose of the aeroplane with blood, and I think they put his testicles in the nose wheel, if I remember rightly, and they said, okay, it's blessed, go away and fly it. So I had to go and fly the aeroplane with all this blood and stuff on it, and while I was doing my little flight, the post-blessing flight, they took the goat away and cooked it. So by the time I landed, there was this large table laid out in the hangar, and we were all sitting there and we were daubed. We sat there and we drank funny drinks and we ate funny stuff. And thereafter the aeroplane didn't crash.
And
the Nepalese said, look, it works.
Eating and drinking funny stuff was an occupational hazard for the travelling teams.
Even staying in good hotels, you invariably suffered a wee bit of the Montezuma's revenge, as it's known politely. And in fact, it's quite a dinner conversation out there because everybody, even expats living out there, suffer from it.
The cook came and grabbed a pair of armadillos, and there were squeals came from the kitchen. And about an hour later, armadillo appeared. Jimmy's a real Belfast eating man. He likes his steak, his chips, and his peas. And there was no choice of menu whatsoever in this establishment.
I would say Chivers Marmalade's famous worldwide and all sorts of out-of-the-way places, because no matter what little hotel or good hotel we were staying in, Lindsay brought down his Chivers Marmalade for his breakfast, so he did.
They invited everybody, all the ambassadors and people like that in the country, to go out there and have a party, which meant squatting down eating sheep's eyeballs with your fingers.
The Sky Van was the object of many a young lad's dreams, even appearing in the Eagle comic. And it was a prize for model makers of a former generation. One veteran kit remains to be assembled.
I don't know why, but it is sat in my bookcase there for a considerable number of years now. I think maybe I will assemble it and then maybe even put it in a wee glass case.
But such is the enduring appeal of the Sky Van that for a new generation, a new kit has been launched.
Dream, 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 dream when I want you. In my arms when I want you. And all your charms whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. Dream, dream, dream when I feel blue. In the night and I need you to hold me tight whenever I want you. All I have to
Flying into Sydenham, where it first saw the light of day, this one belongs to Babcock Aviation from Kidlington near Oxford, the last company in the UK using Sky Vans. They're contracted to the Ministry of Defence for parachute training.
Absolutely marvellous to see one of the best aeroplanes that Shorts ever produced back home in its original place.
And I think it was done by a lot of inexperienced people. There weren't many experienced people on that team. Very nice.
I wish I was 30 years younger. I'd be jumping on board and flying away off somewhere around the world.
It's very nice to see it again. You know, it's an awful long time since I think one's seen one in here. So it's very pleasant to see it again.
Old memories flood back. Burma, Thailand, Muscat, Oman. Argentina. I was actually in Argentina when this one was delivered.
This one is due to retire in about 2 months' time. We've had a couple of interesting offers today, one of which was from the Ulster Aviation Society, and it's a possibility. I'd love to see a Sky Van preserved for the future because it's a wonderful aeroplane.
Fingers crossed that it might end up in Langford Lodge with the Ulster Aviation Society. That would be another plus, bringing it not quite home but nearly home.
It's great to see it again, you know, and it's the fact that just history, and I might have been involved with this one personally a long time ago, so I have to go back and look through the records.
I was just surprised just how original it looked, you know. I thought there would have been a big change. Now I think they've changed the type of the communications equipment and the like, but basically the instrumentation's all the same.
Jeff, thanks very much.
Okay, Jimmy.
Lovely.
Thanks very much.
I'll be in touch with Peter.
Right. Cheers.
When the Belfast child sings again,
The sight of a Skyvan passing over Belfast is increasingly rare. And even though Shorts is now part of worldwide aerospace giant Bombardier, the days of Belfast producing complete aircraft have gone.
I'm sorry from the whole of Northern Ireland point of view that we're only building bits of tubes rather than the whole airplane.
Just about the time I retired, just before I retired, we tried very hard to persuade the government to support us in producing a jet commuter aircraft, but they said no. Mrs. Thatcher said no, 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 no. So that was it.
I don't suppose we'll ever go back to having an aircraft industry as such in Northern Ireland again. It's a great shame.
We would recognise that there is an emotional attachment in Belfast to building complete aircraft. We would have to recognise as well that when we were doing that, we were not a particularly successful organisation. Government ownership, a lack of investment, meant that we were not successful and we could not sustain the organisation in the long term. That meant privatisation, it meant acquisition by Bombardier, and a over £1.1 billion investment by them in new technologies, new products, and in our people in training and development. We're now part of an organisation which is a world leader in business aircraft and in regional aircraft, and we believe now we have a platform for further success in the future. We were founded on innovation. The Skyvan was an innovative product, and it's innovation which will really keep us going for the future.
You know, if I still worked on the farms, she'd be a beauty. Because what you look for in a lady that works on the farms might not be what you look for a gal in the city.
Well, the Skyvan to the aeroplane world was like the white van is to the present day road traffic.
It was very simple to maintain. I mean, even I understood it, so it must have been fairly simple.
I really loved the Skyvan. Very safe aircraft indeed. So it was easily maintained, very strong, great little workhorse, very robust.
And the Shorts people were superb at building good aeroplanes, there's no doubt about that.
This airplane would kick the pants off the Twin Otter if it had floats on it. So I'm looking for the drawings. I know they're in a box in Ireland and I want them because we'll be the first operator in the world to put it on floats. Home sweet home.